Hades is an excellent video game, shining as a bright spot that released in the ungodly terrible year of 2020. I didn't get around to playing it until around 4 or 5 months after it launched in September, but you don't need me to tell you how great it is. Hades got plenty of attention and earned many rewards for its creativity and originality. But I wanted to talk about my personal love for the game, and specifically one thing about Hades that I don't think is mentioned nearly as frequently as it should be. This thing actually being my main reason for loving the game, and still thinking about it and going back to it every now and then. It all centers around our protagonist himself, Zagreus. I remember when the game came out and hearing about all of the reviews, praising the visuals, action, and storytelling. I couldn't agree with them more. Hades truly feels like a culmination of the creativity and talent of Supergiant if you're at all familiar with their previous works. I remember dabbling in Transistor, but it didn't leave a strong impression on me. Meanwhile, I was hooked with Hades. The isometric blend of 2D and 3D art, the simple-to-learn, fast-paced action, and the wonderful, mostly non-linear form of storytelling has rightfully captivated the hearts of the players. It's a bold, confident game, and that confidence bleeds out of every seam and edge in the world. It's a truly wonderful and polished adventure, but all that isn't what's kept me hooked to the game. Now don't get me wrong, all of the aforementioned elements are great, and I really love how they culminate together, but it's not what draws me into Hades. I've played plenty of other games with strong gameplay, visuals, and storytelling that haven't gotten me to like them as much as I do Hades. In my experience, roguelike games don't really hook me at all. I've tried quite a few of them, and I've fallen off of them very quickly. So what's the catch? What is this game doing differently? And why does it center around Zagreus himself? I realized what the secret ingredient was the other day when I decided to pick the game back up on a whim. I resumed what used to be a near nightly routine for me, starting a run every night on the Switch before bed. Yeah, it probably wasn't healthy for my sleep, but man, the game's addicting. Anyways, as I was watching Zagreus do his normal routine and having a chat with one of the characters in the game, it came to me. And it's that Zagreus is probably the most likable video game character I've seen in years. Actually, let me rephrase that, because that's not entirely accurate. Zagreus is almost definitely one of my favorite fictional, not just video games, fictional characters that I've seen in probably a decade? Now, likability doesn't make for an inherently great character. In the very same game, you could argue that Theseus himself is completely obnoxious and unlikable, even though he's totally hammy and fun. Zagreus is everything a young, relatable protagonist should be if the goal is to make them likable. He's confident without being cocky. He's competent without coming across as overpowered. And he's witty and snarky without coming across as annoying or rude. On the contrary, one thing that actually stands out to me about Zagreus is that he's actually very friendly. It's weird to think of that as a unique trait, but it's true. Zagreus isn't just pleasant and charming, he's genuinely nice and respectful to all those he meets. Within one of the very first lines of dialogue in the House of Hades, the game's hub area, he has a warm conversation with Nyx, who acts as a surrogate mother of his. He's polite and appreciative for the help and guidance that Nyx offers him, and this politeness and appreciation extends to nearly every other character he meets in the game. He looks up to and admires his teacher Achilles. He has an almost bickering brotherly relationship with Thanatos, and even shows kindness towards the random workers in the house. There's an employee photo hung up that randomly cycles between different workers in the house, and Zagreus will pay a compliment to whomever happens to have their portrait up. It's small touches, but they really add up. Many reviewers have complimented Hades' narrative and storytelling, yet I wish more of them would bring up just how charming Zagreus is as a character. And it never leans too heavily in one direction. It all feels very well thought out to make sure that Zagreus never comes across as one note. I also really need to pay compliments to the super talented voice actor Darren Korb, who perfectly captures the feeling of a capable, caring, and flawed young man, even though his age is questionable at best, given his godly status. Zagreus even extends this charm and wit to his enemies. It's never done so in a way that can come across as narcissistic or self-aware. I can't exactly describe it, other than Zagreus never feeling like he comes across as a snarky superhero type figure. Yeah, I'm referring to what everyone calls MCU writing. In one encounter in the game against a pair of bosses, Theseus and Asterius, Zagreus regularly demonstrates respect towards Asterius whilst also expressing rightful annoyance at Theseus, who acts almost like a Saturday morning cartoon protagonist, constantly prattling on about vanquishing evil and being the hero of the story. It's a fun contrast with Zagreus, a more down-to-earth character with relatable and personal goals. In the arena that this confrontation takes place in, it's full of background NPCs that all cheer on Theseus and Asterius, but there's one NPC colored red that represents the single fan of Zagreus, and when he first notices it, he isn't cocky or snarky about it, but genuinely surprised and humbled. And whenever you visit the fan in future runs, Zagreus will pay them a compliment or dedicate his victory to the fan, and it's just one of many examples that demonstrate his depth and winning personality. It's this likability and charm that keeps me thinking about Hades. The gameplay and presentation is wonderful, but I was also motivated to continue my early runs of the game because I really wanted Zagreus to get out of the underworld. I wanted him to get out because man, he's just such a cool dude. and he deserves his happiness and freedom. I could sympathize with him because he felt so human. I wanted him to succeed as much as he wanted it too, and that's a very hard thing to do in video games, and even harder for me personally. I'm not someone who typically gets moved in video game stories. There's plenty of them that I enjoy participating in watching, but there's very few of them that really connect with me. And I couldn't really tell you why, it's just a feeling that I either have or I don't. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I can tell you that whenever discussions are held about quote-unquote best video game narratives and characters, none of them seem to impact me the same way, speaking mostly from a narrative standpoint. The only recent example I can think of some games that really resonated with me are Undertale, and I think Metal Gear Solid 4? Again, I can't really explain why. And yet, with Hades, Zagreus easily rises above for me. Another thing worth mentioning with Zagreus is the contrast with my expectations. Before I started playing and having seen the visuals and a limited understanding of the setting, I was fully expecting Zagreus to be an overconfident, cocky protagonist with selfish goals that would maybe give him room for growth as the narrative progresses. Kinda like a typical loner, edgy, hot-headed protagonist with a secret heart of gold that would unveil over time. Kind of similar to Dante from the Devil May Cry series. I was doubly expecting this once I found out he was the Prince of the Underworld. With that in mind, I also figured he would come across as somewhat sinister or with potentially morally gray values, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Zagreus is a chummy young man with an admirable attitude. He may resent his father and bicker with him, but you can feel the earnestness of their relationship. It never comes across as a simple good versus evil dynamic, but rather a father and son who never quite understood each other as well as they wanted. It's handled perfectly in my opinion. It's difficult to write an interesting character. It's even harder to make someone both interesting and likable. Like I said before, a character can be one or the other without being both. For some easy examples, I think a character like Leon from the original Resident Evil 4 is super likable. He's not really all that interesting, but that doesn't matter. His backstory and motivations aren't what make him fun to watch. It's his bravado and action hero wittiness, and it works great for that story. Meanwhile, I think many great villains are interesting without being all that likable, like Sephiroth in the original Final Fantasy VII. He doesn't really possess or demonstrate any qualities or characteristics that present him as likable, or even relatable, but his build-up, his power, and his presence easily made him the most compelling part of FF7's story. I'm not really making a well-articulated argument or anything like that. I just really love this character, and his charm and narrative easily won me over in a way that almost no other game does for me. Video games are cool, dude, and I can only hope that Supergiant keeps the momentum going with Hades too. But I've got no reason to doubt that the protagonist of the sequel will win me over the same way that the Prince of the Underworld did.